Brandon, what can you tell us about Banks and Marshall?
So I was with both those guys. I was with Eric last year. I felt like we really had three really good young prospects last year with the Rams. He certainly was one of them. He's the type of interior defensive lineman that we really value. He's got size, length, athletic ability, and just a lot of upside as a player. He really proved himself last year in camp and just made a really good impression on all of us. And watching him in the preseason this year, he was outstanding and just felt like he's the type of interior defensive lineman that we want to kind of grow with. There's a lot in there to work with. He's a great young man. He's been trained the right way. We're excited to get him on our team and see where it goes. And then with Trey, both myself and Ronaldo, we were both with him. And I think what we're trying to do is we're going to try and create the culture of our DB room where we have a lot of defensive backs that can do a lot of different things. He's an outstanding special teams player, and he fits the type of culture that we want to have in that room where lots of expected of you. And he's used to that. He's grown up in a really good environment there with Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson. Chris Harris was there. He was a part of a really good secondary when we were there last year, and just feel like he can really complete the depth in our DB room and also create a lot of value on special teams. So excited about having Trey.
Is he inside, outside? Can he move?
He's a safety, and he's played dime money. So he will play in those two roles for us. And then he was a four-core special teamer for us in Denver.
And just with the Faison getting waived, just what he was started camp, obviously working with the ones, but just sort of what happened with him over training camp.
Yeah, it's a tough decision. Brandon we still have a high opinion of him. I think where the numbers were, what we wanted to do is put the best collection of 10 defensive backs on the team. And I think with us being able to get Ryan Smith back here in a short time and then having the flexibility with Keemon being an inside or outside guy, Keemon provides more value on special teams at this time, and so would Ryan. So what we wanted to do with the defensive back room is really have our 10 best guys up, and then certainly those back 4 or 5 spots be devoted to the kicking game.
Brandon, do you have a good idea now who's going to be playing on special teams here with your guys picked out?
Yeah, I think that we've really spent a ton of time on that in the last, I would say, 10 days. And I think out there in the walkthrough, I think we have a lot clearer picture of who those core 4 special teams guys are going to be. And then people that aren't core 4, okay, what are those 2 jobs that they're going to do? And I think that we've spent a lot of time doing that. And guys, I should have done this yesterday, but tip of the cap to Darius Swinton and his wife Hillary. Gave birth to a baby boy, Cameron, healthy, 8 pounds, 11 ounces. So he's been doing some work remotely. But Darius and Mayor, myself, our coaching staff, and Tom, we've been really working through that for the last 10 days, is solidifying the kicking game. And as you guys know, it's really important to the depth of our team. And we want to be, really impactful in the special teams. And a big part of impacting special teams is getting the right people in the right seats. And so I think that we're closer to being there after this, initial 53. Yeah, we're going to, that's still ongoing. But right now, if we started a game, KJ Hill would be returning punts for us for sure. And then a kickoff return, that's kind of to be decided. We're going to decide that within the next 10 days before we go play those guys. But if, the season started today, KJ would catch the punts for sure.
Is Nas in the mix?
He is. Yeah, he's in the mix with Larry Roundtree, Justin Jackson, and KJ. Those guys would be the candidates right now. That are kind of auditioning for that job.
Is the hope to get Forrest on the practice squad if he clears waivers?
Absolutely, yes.
Coach Staley, in talking about Larry Roundtree, what did he do to earn a spot on the team?
I think he's our style of back. I think he gives us contrast. He's heavy. You feel him on contact. He can see. I think he's come a long way in pass protection. I think he showed real toughness in pass protection. He showed real contributions on special teams, both as a punt member, running down on kickoff, being able to be a return guy for us. But I feel like he gives us contrast in that running back room. And I felt like he in the preseason he was productive. I mean, had 20-some carries for over 100 yards, popped a couple of explosive runs, and showed that ability to kind of win on contact that you need to have in this league when space is tight. So excited for his progress, and he's still at the beginning, and we're excited to keep working with him.
Brandon, you have spoken about Joey Bosa's new roles, but how excited are you to see his defense as a complete unit compete on that first game?
I'm really excited. Yesterday we had a really good practice, and the reason why we had a good practice is we're starting to sound like what I'm used to, hearing from a good defense. And then what happens is when you sound like that pre-snap, then you go play the way you're capable of post-snap. And I felt like we're getting closer to playing the way that we want to play. And I think he's a good example of that. Maybe the newer jobs that we're asking him to do, he's finding more of a comfort zone. And then the jobs that he's designed to do, he's doing those jobs better than he ever has before. And I think he's a great example of someone who's really bought into how we play and why we play that way and being a selfless guy. And I feel like, the best is to come for Joey Bosa. But I've really enjoyed coaching him, and I think he's been outstanding in training camp.
How's the adjustment curve been dropping back into pass coverage and kind of learning that for him?
I think it's easy for him athletically. It's just from a processing standpoint, just being more aware of some formational stuff. We're not asking him to perform a difficult job, but what we're asking him to do is see more. And what we think that will do for us is create more opportunities for himself and others where they can't always say, he's here, he's doing this, I can count on this. And even if it's just 1 out of 10 times, that one time is going to help us. And then factoring in that we're moving him around within the formation, that will help himself and others, because people are going to have to identify where he is and what that means. And it's not just him. It's other guys within our defense. And he's just been so refreshing that way. And I'm really proud of him.
This you're referring to, is that the communication among players?
Yeah.
When they line up?
Yeah, Cam, just pre-snap, there's just a standard that we expect from our guys, and there's so much happening now in the modern NFL. There's so much motion, as you guys are aware of. Like, the best teams in the NFL motion a lot. And the toughest teams to cover motion a lot. And it's not just an easy motion like it used to be in 1990, where one guy would move and it was an easy sort of pace that you could key diagnose. Now there's multiple things happening at the formation, as the ball snapped. The snap point, like when that motion is happening, how fast it's happening, and then where the ball snapped, that's a lot for defenses now. That's why it's so tough to defend. That's why everyone's wondering why the offenses are exploding. Well, what you're defending is really challenging, and so you have to really dive into the specifics of what that means. And so pre-snap, we have a standard that we all should be able to close our eyes, and if we didn't see anything and we were just listening, we could feel really good about our chances, and we're getting closer to being that way,
Oh, sorry.
No, we're getting closer to sounding that way, that the way we need to sound in order to defend all these special people.
In your last game as a Ram, you played the Packers. When you came in as the Chargers head coach, was Corey Linsley really a guy that you had wanted for your team, and especially at center? Yes.
Corey Linsley is one of the best linemen that I've had to go against in the NFL. He's a commander. Specifically last year, we were the number 1 defense in the NFL, and there was one team that blocked us, and that was them. They blocked us in that divisional game, and he was a big part of it. They specifically blocked us in the middle, both in the run game and in the pass game. And I defended him when I was in Chicago, and then when I was in Denver. And I'm aware of kind of where he's from. He's from Youngstown. Went to Boardman. I'm from Northeast Ohio. I know all about his career at Ohio State, the way people at Ohio State feel about him. And I know that in the history of football, when you can have a center quarterback power source in the middle of your offense, that has a real impact on your team. And I felt like having him and Justin partner up, I think would be really good for our offense and be really good for our team, because when you sign people in free agency, you want the other people on your team to know quickly why they're there. When you sign people in free agency, it shouldn't take people forever to know why you signed them, okay? And it hasn't taken our players long to see why he's become the player that he's become. And he's just such a great example for our team, and I'm just really excited to team up with him on Sundays, because my record against the guy is not very good. All right, it's not very good. And so now we beat him one time when I was in Chicago, and otherwise he's gotten the best of me. So I'm glad that we're going to be competing together now on Sundays.
So you faced him, and now you're with him. Has there anything jumped out at you about him, or something that you really thought, oh wow, he does this even better than what I thought?
I think his level of command, you can see it, it's obvious, but I think the depth of his experiences, and certainly him partnering up with Aaron and being able to kind of learn about their relationship and how they operated, and the way that they approach a week, the way they approach a game, little things that like make a big difference. I think I've been able to tap into some of that, and I think what he's been able to do is help us defensively, organize our defense and structure our defense, and that's what I told you guys about becoming a team of teams where, hey, we can really benefit from learning about this guy and what their plan of attack was against us, and then, hey, maybe shaping some things defensively as a byproduct of that. And I think that he's been able to help me a lot with that and all the experiences that he's had, and I've really enjoyed teaming up with him.
You mentioned earlier that in preseason games that you could have schemed some things to help out some of your tackles. When you talk about Corey, is it scheme that kind of made him so good, or what specifically about him that makes him that good that he's able to block you guys on when you coach with the Rams?
We play a lot of stuff on defense. So from an identification standpoint, we force people to identify a lot. And I think what he was able to do with the quarterback that he was with was they were able to identify what we were in because he's got 6 or 7 years worth of experiences. And they were able to go into the plan with a good game plan versus us in terms of how to identify what we were in. And then I think from just a pure relationship standpoint, when you have that checks and balances with the center quarterback, there's not going to be anything that the other 11 guys can do that you can't co-sign with. Like, let's say Corey Linsley was wrong, right? Justin Herbert is a checks and balance, and vice versa, right? When you have that power source in the middle, you have a really, I think, unique checks and balances where you can get your offense in a premium situation, and that's what you want to, be in the NFL. You want to avoid the catastrophe, the tough downs that occur because you have to block a lot of tough stuff over there. You have to block a lot of good players and a lot of good scheme. And I think what he allows you to do is recognize things quicker. And then what he does is he allows his teammates to play better because of that recognition and that ability to respond quickly.
Did you guys want to get Cortez on the practice squad? Looked like he cleared waivers, ended up in Kansas City.
Yeah, it's a numbers thing with him. I think that we felt like, there were some other guys that, would fit the practice squad model better right now. But not ruling that out down the line because we think a lot of him, but just felt like the guys that we signed back are the best fits for us right now.
And then a lot of defensive players and Ronaldo have talked about how at the beginning of the defensive install, you started with philosophies as opposed to getting into like specific X's and O's stuff. Where does that idea come from for you? Is it something you learned at a previous stop, or was that your own idea that you generated to sort of start with the philosophical parts of the defense?
Yeah, it's Daniel, I love the question because it's really important to me and how we do things around here. If I give you a piece of paper and I tell you what to do, it will never mean as much as I show you how to do it first and why we're doing it. All right, what I like to do is give life to what's on paper or what's on the screen so that I can create the buy-in, I can create the investment from the player, the coach, whomever. I want to show them exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and when we're doing it, and draw from a lot of inventory to paint a picture for somebody. And by doing that in a general way first, I think that you create more buy-in. And then what that allows you to do is to get to the specifics quicker. And there's a lot of specifics in the NFL that are really challenging. The adjustments that we have to make are really tough. And that's why I will tell you for as long as I live that there's a lot that goes into an NFL week. In order to get all of that done, your players must have a firm grasp of what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because what you're asking them to do is really challenging. So in order for them to be able to go as far as you want them to go, which is a long way, they have to know that it's going to work, They have to know that it's going to work, and that's what I try to do at the front end, show them, hey, this is philosophically why we do what we do. And then when we dive into the deep chapters and to the specifics, then they'll, be able to go with you full speed because they know why it's important.
How much was that, just expanding on what you said, being a former quarterback, starting as a quarterback, kind of having that offensive mind at first, where it seems like when teaching an offense, you've got to start with a philosophy and a root point and then expand the tree from there? Yeah,
I think you can operate a lot better as a player when you know how the other pieces are working, whether it's the pieces on your side of the ball that are around you. Because a lot of people, when they install defense, they're like, hey, Daniel Popper, you are the star, and this is your job. Okay, the end. And what they don't do is, okay, what are the two safeties doing? What are the two corners are doing? What are the linebackers doing? What's the front doing? And what we try and do is we kind of go the opposite way. We teach them what the other 10 guys are doing and within our concepts. And so they don't have to memorize things, number one, so they can see the big picture. But then so that they can use their partners. There's 22 people on the field at one time. How do I use these other 21 players to my advantage? And what we try and teach our players is how to use the other 21 people on the field to their advantage, and the time and score in the game, field zone. How do I use all this to my advantage so that I can go become the player that I'm capable of being? Because that's what makes the big difference in a player, units, teams. It's the little things. And there's a lot of little things that you can pick up if you have a better understanding of what everybody's doing. And that's where philosophically we try and a lot of people, they use the term complex, and I don't agree with that. Complex, what we try and do is on the front end, introduce them to a lot, because what we feel like is cumulative effect will take over, where over time, you have all these things compounding, and that will result in big returns down the line. And so on the front end, it's more challenging, but as you go, there's no better feeling in life because you have full command. And then what we want to do is we want to create a team where our players have full ownership of what's happening, where a coach isn't having to tell them what to do all the time. We want to create something where our players are making the decisions because they're the people that are out there in front of 80,000 people where you can't hear. So we try to organize everything here where those guys are making the decisions, and as coaches, we're excited about the decisions that they make because they're ready to make them.
And then just onto something totally different. Sean pointed out yesterday that all but one of his players are vaccinated. You guys had a good preseason, 90% or more. On your 53, do you still have one or two outliers, or are all your guys vaccinated?
I don't know the exact number, but I know that our numbers have climbed extremely high throughout the preseason, and I think that as we've learned more, I think what we've been able to do is keep our ecosystem in here designed a little bit more effectively. I think that as you go, you're just able to learn more, design better, and I think our players have become more aware of what's going around globally, and regardless of your status, I think that everybody knows how to be in the safest environment, if that makes sense. And I think that we're doing that here. And I think the way we've approached it throughout the preseason is being, as distant as we can, and making sure that we've organized things in a way where we don't have those close contact traces. We're trying everything we can to avoid them. I don't know if we'll be perfect, but we're trying our best to be intentional. And then, as you guys know, there was new protocols, this week for staff within the complex, people, strength and conditioning staff, equipment staff, training staff with masks and stuff like that, and making sure that we just follow that to the fullest. And I think that we've been vigilant, and I think that we all know how serious this is, and I think that we're fully invested in a team, as an organization, and making sure that we're as safe as possible.
Hey, so back to that buy-in piece and getting players to buy into the philosophy. How much of their input are you relying on in that process to allow them to have ownership of kind of what's going on?
A lot. At first, you're painting the picture, and as they learn more, then that's where the ownership comes in. So, hey guys, we could do this 2 ways this week. We could treat this bunch 2 ways this week. All right, what ways do you like? Hey, Chris, you're the one, Chris Harris, you're the one that are going to be in there in the fire. Hey, there's 2 options here. I like them both. What works better for you? All right. Hey, we're on 3rd down. We got a couple good rush plans. Let's say we got 5-man rush plans that we like. All right. Hey, Joey, talk to me. Which ones do you really like this week? Let's rank them. Okay. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So that's what we try to do and try to create the ownership within our team, is go to them and get them in their comfort zone. We know that these plays work, but we know that they'll make them work better, right, based off what they like, all right, and treating Joey Bosa like you were Justin Herbert, right, and that's what we really believe in, and that's why relationships matter, all right, because when you have good relationship, you'll be surprised how many adjustments they can make for you. When you don't have to make the adjustments, they make them for you. They've got some good ideas in the fire as we go on, and we're not there yet, but we will be. And it's happening out there in these practices. It just happened out there in the walkthrough. And that's what we're trying to create here. And that way we can live with the result. And, you know, we're not going to win every game. We're not going to be perfect on every rep, but we can be proud of how we're approaching it, you know, and that's what's really important to me.
When did you first realize in your coaching career that changing up the initial install to being more broad, more philosophical, as opposed to specific exosomes? When did you have that realization? Like, who did you come up with that, like, just on your own, or were there influences?
I think my mom's, you know, probably the biggest influence on my ability to teach, and my wife. Those are the two biggest influences on me as a teacher. Because I think what happens is, what you don't want is to create a fog of complexity where your players really don't know anything. Like, they've been absorbed and exposed to stuff, but they don't really know it. They don't really have command over it. They can't really tell you what or how. And I think that on the front end, if you do a good job and you're intentional on the front end, I think it gets easier and more productive as you go for you as a coach or as a teacher. And that's why I think, you know, we're so specific about how we teach, and not so specific that it has to be perfect, but we're real intentional about the progression of things. Because I think what it ends up doing is, as you move on, if you do it right on the front end, then you're able to flow more naturally, more freely, quickly, you know, with more speed. And that's what you need in the NFL. You need to be able to operate with a lot of speed because things are so dynamic. They're so dynamic. You go into halftime and you got 8 minutes, guys. Like, you have 8 minutes to just go over like 40 plays, you know, and so you got to be able to talk through that fast. And so a big part of it is how you've organized your teaching so that you can explain things to them quickly and they can truly absorb it.
How much did you refine that install and teaching that system at John Carroll?
A ton.
Because
Yeah.
a lot of your guys say,
Yeah.
you brought an NFL playbook in a system to a D3 school that
Yep. If
had
my
only
players,
bunch-based plays.
like if you talk to Javon and Mike, if you talk to Reese, Ray, like some of those guys that I coached specifically in the secondary, Mason McHenrick, Andy Bryan, those guys, what they would tell you, if they came into an install, they would just say, he's a lot better. That's what they would say. They're like, he's the same guy, he's just better at it, you know, because, and that's what they would say when I was at John Carroll. We got better as we went. Like, we got off to an awesome start there, but 2013, 2016, we were a lot better, you know, because we're always going to try and get better and try and improve. And that's kind of how I am, you know, just I'm always trying to do it as well as I can do it. I learned so much. Like, hey, we got these gangster coaches now that, like, I'm with Mike Wilhoit, who's a former player who's helping me teach better. Derek Ansley, who's come from the college game, who's been a defensive coordinator. R. Hill, who played 10 years in the NFL. Giff Smith and Jay Rogers up front. Like, we can just teach things better now. Like, we're just better at it because we're always thinking about the best way to do it. And like I said, it's not going to, you know, I'm not promising that it's going to be perfect, but I know that the process and our intentions are where it needs to be, because you have to be like that in order to be as good as you can be. And more importantly, your players have to know that. They need to know when you walk in a meeting that you're trying your best for them. And you're explaining, hey, this is why we're doing this, fellas. This is why we made this change this week. This is why we did it. You know, we just had something down there today that I learned from last year that I didn't coach well enough last year with the Rams. I didn't coach it well enough. And I showed them, guys, this is what I jacked up last year, and this is how we're going to fix it moving forward. And that's what players want. They just want to be able to see, yeah, all right, yeah, you're right, coach, you jacked that up, all right? And this is going to help us moving forward. But it's having a breakthrough like that with them, and that's how you do it. You show them exactly. And then, hey, guys, here was my thought process. Here's what I was thinking, but now here's what I'm thinking now. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do with them.